Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigland Network Show. My name is Emma Vigland. It is ESVN OT. Everybody, please like and subscribe. Like this stream. Get it up there in the algorithm. And if you're listening on the podcast platform, 5 stars, pretty please. Would very much enjoy that. Hope you enjoy the show as much as I would enjoy said liking and said 5 stars and comment and do all that good stuff. Hello, Bradley Alsop, co-host and producer.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Yes. Hello to you. Okay.
I'm in a great mood.
Oh, you are?
I'm in a really good mood.
Interesting.
I'm in a really good mood.
Okay.
Just saying.
You want to elaborate?
Just wanted to observe that I'm in a good mood.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, even just does this have a Jets tie-in or no?
No.
No. All right. I'm glad you're in a good mood. I'm in a good mood too. Let's just touch on some NBA stuff really quickly before we get into our locks and our discussions about these hirings.
And to our impatient viewers who are not as ecstatic about the NFL as we are, we promise you, we only have a few more weeks until we will be certainly covering far more.
Absolutely.
Basketball, hockey, soccer, whatever, any sport, you name it, we'll cover it.
Soccer.
Football.
Footy. But I mean, probably not. Is the point?
I was kind of trying to shoehorn that we'll still cover football.
Oh, that too.
And maybe
come on,
trick the viewers who think we were covering the other football.
There is no off season for the NFL. I mean, we're going to be doing mock drafts. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah,
but we will have more sports coverage. That's not once we get past the most important juncture of the NFL season. But
God, I'm so excited for Sunday. I wish you could just be here right now.
I can't believe there's not a Saturday game.
Yeah.
But anyways, yes, Damian Lillard dropped 60 points last night. 21 of 29 shooting.
Fourth time in his career.
He had 50 by the third quarter.
29 shot attempts, 10 free throw attempts to get 60. That is the highest true shooting percentage in terms of efficiency on shot attempts and free throws ever recorded in a 60-point game. Wow. It's amazing that he's still at this level. Like, I thought that he might fall off given his lack of support, but he never ceases.
Yeah, and the Blazers haven't been playing that well recently, unfortunately, and I think it seems to be as if there is the same problem that Dame-led teams have had his entire career, which is that he has talented pieces around him, but it's kind of just not been enough to supplement him enough to be the most competitive team in the Western Conference or one of the top 4.
Yeah.
And that seems to be happening again. But
even at their peak when,
right, even when CJ McCollum
yeah, right.
But I will say, I think this is another reminder of just how, when we talk about some of the best scorers, ever, one of the best offensive scoring players ever. I think sometimes we paper over him because he hasn't had as much success, or maybe hasn't revolutionized the game the most as someone for example Steph Curry has. But it just goes to show you that a guy like Dame here, even with this personnel, even with the record that they have, 32, 33 years old, can still put up 60 on a given night.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's incredible that he's still with Portland after all this time as well. And any other star would have been out of there in a second.
Totally, and credit to him for, as much as I think people get up in arms and get, bent out of shape about certain amazing or really, really skilled players not getting a championship or not having a ring to kind of cement their legacy or cement their career. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with being a fantastic player on a team for a decade plus, bringing consistently competitive basketball to a smaller market like Portland, and being a beacon of light and a true icon of a city. I think there are things that do matter as much, if not more so, than championships or rings or playoff success, but I think it's really obscured by how we look at who is the best and how we quantify that.
Well, that's something that just grinds my gears, right? That you measure a player's greatness based on championship
not by
rings.
their quality of play, but whether they can win in an extremely variant, extremely high, improbable luck luck based, not entirely, but there's a lot of luck that comes into postseason victories, and using that as the rubric as opposed to just someone with a consistent play game in and game out.
It's childish to I think measure people by that kind of success when you see what Damian Lillard is doing in Portland. And it's also just this double-edged sword where NBA players, there's this sense that, oh, they're disloyal to their teams and they just want to go chase rings, right? But at the same time, how are they judged by a wide swath of fans, if not most fans who consume sports? It's by rings.
Right.
I mean, like that's the.
So there is like that incentive almost built in.
Exactly.
They feel the pressure to do so.
My legacy is on the line. My Hall of Fame legacy is on the line. It is, and it's most prevalent in the NBA because of just, how one individual player or two or three can influence a championship game. But
now,
team, I should say.
Now, especially knowing how like terminally online Kevin Durant is, like I can't imagine, especially knowing kind of how like complex and frankly kind of like weird of a guy he is. I don't even say that in a
he's mercurial.
I don't say that in a mean way.
And insecure.
I say he's like it's like extremely fascinating to me how like one of the best athletes on the entire planet is still kind of like really guarded and defensive and weird and feels the need to like respond to randos on Twitter to be like, you don't know what you're talking about my jab step. It's like, obviously, dude, this guy has 2 followers and like Cal Ripken Jr. is his avatar photo. But I can only imagine, knowing that based off what we've read about him and heard from him, that like that probably did factor into being like, I need to prove that I can win a championship.
Yeah.
I need to prove that I can be the guy to be the centerpiece of a championship team. And like it's obviously he won his rings with Golden State, but like I'm sure it came with some consternation about like, oh, but people are going to discount that because I had Stephen, Clay, and Draymond, and now like I think this stuff can really mess with people's head when like I think sometimes we have to remember when, especially when it comes to guys like Damian Lillard and others, like being good is enough.
Yeah,
like being
good is
being
enough.
Awesome and being electric and like bringing iconic moments and moments of joy to your franchise is also like. Doesn't get negated if it doesn't lead to a championship.
I agree. I wish there was more of that kind of nuanced discussion in sports from fans. With that said, we have some NFL staffing news that we want to get to before we get into our locks. We'll start with Frank Reich, and then we'll get into the Jets. Okay.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Leave people hanging.
Nice.
Do you want to? Which one?
We can start with Frank Reich.
All right. So, I mean, to me, it's just a little more important because of the head coaching situation.
Oh yeah, of course.
Complicated situation in Carolina. Steve Wilkes passed over for Frank Reich in their head coach search. And I'll just say this, Frank Reich, immediately best coach in the NFC South, I think. I know you like Arthur Smith probably a little bit more than me.
But still,
I mean, Frank Reich was unjustly fired by the Indianapolis Colts. He had a lot of success there, and that was a case of an impatient owner. And and Reich
with
had
like shitty hands too, just in terms of like who he had to work with. Yeah, exactly.
It was not a good situation for Reich, and so I think this is a really good move by the Carolina Panthers. I will say though, we'll pull up this tweet right here. This is from Steve Wilkes' lawyer, and I think it's just notable that we need to point out that Wilkes is a part of the lawsuit that Brian Flores has filed against the NFL for racial discrimination. Wilkes was a one-year, one-and-done head coach for the Arizona Cardinals in 2018 when they were not supposed to be very good, and this is what I've tried to point out many times, that Lovie Smith getting fired, David Culley getting fired consecutively by the Texans. The Texans is not that. I mean, when you measure them just on their record, yes, they had bad records. The point is that they were purposefully going to be bad for tanking seasons.
Right, and the teams were bad.
The teams were bad.
The teams were not good.
And the reason that those guys got hired was because there was an understanding by that racist organization that they're not our long-term coach. So it doesn't matter what we do to their careers. Doesn't matter that this will probably preclude them, especially in David Culley's case. Lovie Smith, I mean, this was like a retirement kind of situation for him. But especially in David Culley's case, this is going to preclude him from getting a head coaching job ever again because the record's so bad. And that's how these guys are judged. That's part of the racial discrimination against black head coaches, is that they're when they are hired, oftentimes they're put in no-win situations where they get screwed over. And so this is what Wilkes' lawyer had to say on Twitter in the wake of this, saying, "We are shocked and disturbed that after the incredible job Coach Wilkes did as interim coach, including bringing the team back into playoff contention and garnering the support of the players and fans." By the way, we should say players have been speaking out in favor of Wilkes behind the scenes, which adds another wrinkle to this. That he was passed over for the head coach position by David Tepper. Second tweet here. There is a legitimate race problem in the NFL, and we can assure you that we will have more to say in the coming days. So that's fascinating. Also fascinating to note that Brian Flores has been in the conversation, the person who headed off this lawsuit, former Miami Dolphins head coach, who, like, when, just because now the Dolphins are fantasy darlings, it's quite similar records for when Brian Flores was the head coach there, by the way. But
yeah, and also there is a reason. I mean, also, of course, when I say this, the big qualifier is credit to Mike Tomlin for
hiring
he is one of the very few pillars in this league as a black coach who has had consistent and near and very prolific a prolific track record as being a decade plus head coach with the same organization since Marvin Lewis with the Bengals. And that almost honestly is hard to count because that was more because of how cheap the Bengals ownership group is and how unwilling they were to really mix it up until, set 14 years of 7-9 play became untenable. And credit to Mike Tomlin for seeing Flores' firing and the kind of how he was jerked around by the Dolphins for what it was, and saw how very talented Flores is and was, and giving him the opportunity to join another staff, keep the Steelers competitive when they were not expected to be that competitive. And now Flores is still in the running for some head coach offerings when a lot of these black coaches who get put in interim roles get kind of shafted or are papered over for either nepotism cases or other, standard fare, oh, this guy was a coach 10 years ago, let's give him another shot.
Yeah.
Flores he was able to not get completely lost in the shuffle and remain a viable candidate.
Well, the viability is interesting, and that's what I was kind of stumbling over a second ago, is just that the fact that the Cardinals are included in this lawsuit and Wilkes is a part of it. The fact that they're considering hiring Flores is interesting,
Definitely,
right?
yeah.
Because Wilkes and Flores are a part of this joint action against the NFL. Wilkes joined it later, and that could protect the Cardinals legally if they were to have Brian Flores. Right. That's a note that I know Mike Florio has hit on. That doesn't mean that Flores doesn't deserve it. He does. And also it's a good fit for the Cardinals, who probably want something the exact opposite of Cliff Kingsbury, college, cushy, undisciplined kind of situation. Flores is gonna grind those guys, and he's not much Call of Duty for Kyler Murray.
He's no nonsense, obviously, and I think that's part of his reputation, but I don't think in a way where it seems like players don't. He does not, in my opinion, seem to have the same no nonsense connotation around him that a guy like Mike Zimmer does, in the sense of where that's someone that he's no nonsense, but he's also it's not enjoyable to play for him. Right. Whereas I think especially what we saw with the Dolphins defense when Flores was head coach, they really played above their station.
Yeah.
They above their personnel. They played really hard and were a pretty good defensive unit. So I still have faith in him as a head coach, and if he can get the right offensive play caller next to him, I think he could make for a really good hire with the right staffing, because he obviously knows offensive play calling isn't his forte. But I think it would be a good move for the Cardinals regardless of their legal liability, because
agreed.
They hired Monty Ossenfort as their GM.
They have a connection.
A scouting director from New England, or a guy with a scouting background from New England. And so I think it is probably encouraging for any Cardinals fans out there that the Bidwell family finally decided to stop hiring their friends in-house
Yes, I mean,
and maintaining the same group
and
of
Steve
people.
Keim just staying there indefinitely.
Right.
But just quickly back to the Panthers before we get too into the Cardinals, because that's still not a certainty. The Brian
it's
Flores
just a
thing.
rumor.
I mean, it's complicated, right? Because Steve Wilkes definitely deserved, if he wanted, to be the Carolina Panthers head coach, another shot at it, given the fact that he took that 1-4 team to 7-10. I mean, that's a 6-6 record with Sam Darnold as your quarterback,
and NFC South aside, like they were a matchup against the Bucs away from winning that division and getting into the playoffs.
Right. However, I do know that what Tepper has wanted since the Rule debacle is a quarterback whisperer, and so this problem is deeper than just hiring. Again, this is like, to bring it back to, it's not just about firing a black coach because they have a bad record. Look a little bit deeper. Look a little bit deeper in this situation as well. The quarterback whisperer. Who gets to be the quarterback whisperer? Usually it's a white guy, right? And I understand teams wanting a coach that's a quarterback whisperer. I mean, the Giants literally just are in this lawsuit because they wanted to go with the quarterback whisperer over Brian Flores.
Right.
And this is going to be an issue for defensive head coaches in the league.
And Belichick texting the wrong Brian.
Yeah, well.
Hey, man, congrats.
Oh.
Did you mean to send this?
Oh, I meant the black.
Crap.
I did not mean the black Brian.
I went too far down in the alphabet. D before F. Sorry, man.
Yeah. But like it just, the point is that who gets to be an offensive guru? Who gets to be a quarterback whisperer? A lot of times it's former quarterbacks. Who gets to be quarterback? The smartest guy on the field. Usually they get designated as the white kid growing up. And it's many layers of racial discrimination, assumptions that need to be unpacked. And so this is about a much deeper issue, a flaw within football and the NFL that needs to be addressed, as opposed to just like, looking at Steve Wilkes' record in a vacuum and saying, well, it should have been Frank Reich. So I think Frank Reich, very good hire for them. But the point about racism and structurally what it means within the NFL, I think, still stands.
And I think, there was that big Washington Post reported piece about, that really just by the numbers, like how many black head coaches there have been in the last 20 years, how many black assistant coaches there have been in the last 20 years. I think kind of examining those coaching trees and how many of those people, whether it's Bill Belichick, whether it's Andy Reid, whether it's Sean McVay, who in their tree is black, and how their mobility as coaches has manifested relative to white coaches. And the nepotism and the connection-based hiring of the sport, when it's a majority white pool to begin with of head coaches, they're most likely going to then, by that token, if they have kids or cousins or brothers or friends, they're probably going to be more white than black when the original grouping is more white than black. And so all of this stuff just perpetuates itself. And like you said, it's a way bigger thing than just this particular Steve Wilkes situation. And I can totally understand why, especially given the lawsuit before the NFL, where his legal team is coming from. But like you said, it's a much broader issue than just the Panthers hiring Frank Reich.
Right.
But from a purely football perspective, I think it's actually a pretty good hire, and I think that we saw what the Panthers could do on offense with their offensive line playing much better towards the end of the season, with even at Sam Darnold as their primary quarterback playing pretty well given his track record, and their three-headed rush attack of Deontay Foreman, Raheem Blackshear, and Chuba Hubbard looked pretty formidable. I mean, even against a terrible Lions defense, they went for like over 300 yards.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, and if they have some good, fun, exciting pieces on defense as well. So I'm thinking that honestly, a few retooling moves, maybe if they're able to draft a quarterback, this team will be fun. This team will be exciting.
I would take a futures bet right now on them winning the NFC South next year.
I think I wouldn't blame you. I think,
who's it going to be?
Right.
The Brady-less,
either Brady-less Buccaneers,
Bucs.
Dennis Allen-led Saints with Jameis or Dalton as the quarterback, or the Falcons, assuming they can find a quarterback also, unless they run it back with Desmond Ridder or Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I think in terms of coach, and then also really in terms of talent, right now the Panthers are ahead. They just got to figure out the quarterback position. Speaking of figuring out the quarterback position, the Jets, after firing Mike LaFleur, who's apparently the front runner, according to Josina Anderson, to take over as Rams offensive coordinator, The Jets have announced that they are hiring Nathaniel Hackett as their offensive coordinator, who has recently been fired by the Broncos as their head coach after a disastrous season. Hackett was a miracle worker with Blake Bortles when he was the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars, it was terrible, but yet that offense still was humming along. But that's about it. You could probably make a case that Aaron Rodgers was more responsible for his success in Green Bay than Hackett, although who knows at this point, given Rodgers' steep drop-off this year. But how are we feeling, Bradley?
Remember that good boot I was talking about?
Yeah, I've killed it.
I was joking.
Ah.
I told you this earlier, but
this you have to repeat this on the podcast.
I was sitting on my couch and my friend texted me saying, "Hey, have you seen that notification from that like because like Sleeper the fantasy app sometimes gives like NFL news, or have you seen Schefter's tweet?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know what he's talking about." I go on Twitter, I find Schefter's tweet that the Jets have hired Nathaniel Hackett, and the second I read it, my dog stepped on my crotch. And just with her full body weight, just stomped on my crotch, and the simultaneous nature of me receiving that physically and mentally and emotionally, that the Jets were hiring Nathaniel Hackett after his coaching tenure with the Broncos, just really summarized how it feels to be a Jets fan right now.
Yeah. So what hurt worse?
She missed the important part, so it was probably the hiring.
Okay, good. Which dog was that?
My golden.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the bigger
Rosie?
the bigger dog.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good.
the one that would pack more of a punch with that. But yeah, I'm like pretty we saw the reports of this that the Jets were both interviewing Hackett and they were interviewing Clint Kubiak. Speaking of nepotism, longtime head coach Gary Kubiak's son, who was a quarterbacks coach in Denver, and I was alarmed by both options because one, I didn't think necessarily that any of the scheming or any of the offensive play style helped Russell Wilson at all.
Yeah, I'm about to say
during
he
his
should
time
be demoted for his quarterback coaching of Russell Wilson.
In the sense that like it didn't even seem as if what I'm trying to say is that looking at that from like, oh, it's the quarterbacks coach for the Broncos and the head coach of the Broncos, who before that was the offensive coordinator for Aaron Rodgers, which, as we probably can surmise now, was the justification for the Broncos hiring Hackett in the first place, was the thought that maybe they would attract Aaron Rodgers to leave Green Bay for Denver.
Maybe that's what's happening.
So I'll get to my thinking about that in a second, but knowing all of that and seeing how Russell Wilson played the position and the offensive scheme and how lifeless and rudderless they looked for the majority of the season, I think Wilson had 2 or 3 games where he had 3 touchdowns. Like he was by the numbers, by the eye test, by every way you can describe it, he was a bad quarterback.
Yeah.
And as much as I want to put a lot of the blame on Russell, which I think he deserves the lion's share of it, to be sure,
yes,
and is getting paid more, so I honestly think it's hard to fault Hackett as much for when he has less of the, financial piece of the pie,
let alone Wilson's like refusal at most of the season to wear a wristband, to call play,
like to make things easier for him potentially.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to look at that and be like, yeah, one of those two guys could revitalize the Jets offense, especially when the quarterback position is the specific thing that is in flux and not settled and was the biggest sticking point of why they were struggling last season. So I did it especially just where we are now without knowing anything about what might happen with personnel in the future. I don't feel particularly enlightened or heartened by this decision because we've seen what happens when a team poaches this person, the exact same person, with the hopes that the quarterback will follow. And if it doesn't, because there's no guarantee of that, and it did not happen, what happened instead?
Yeah.
The Broncos were shockingly bad relative to expectations, and he was fired midseason.
This is such a nepotism stew, right? Okay, so Nathaniel Hackett, OC under Matt LaFleur, replacing Matt LaFleur's brother Mike in the for the Jets.
Yes,
Nathaniel Hackett was also, I believe, the child of Paul Hackett,
Yes, correct.
former NFL head coach. So, and then the brother is going to, if Matt LaFleur does end up going to Los Angeles for the Rams, he would be under Sean McVay, who is also, I think, a child of a coach, if I am not mistaken. Let's look that up really quickly. Very, he played football. Okay.
So
All right.
it's still football.
His grandfather, John McVay, was a head football coach
go.
at the University of head coach of the New York Giants. Yes. Okay, there you go. And the GM of the San Francisco 49ers for the team's 5 Super Bowl championships. So doesn't mean Sean McVay's not a good head coach, but point being, just seeing the waters that we're swimming in here.
Absolutely. But and of course, some people have been saying, Hackett may not have the characteristics, the leadership abilities, the organizational abilities of being a head coach, but could still function and still perform as an offensive coordinator, which was where his strengths lay to begin with. And I understand all that, but I think it's hard for me to even consider that when I'm thinking about the most recent track record of his last stop. I'm not thinking about him in Jacksonville 6 years ago or in Green Bay 2 or 3 years ago. I'm seeing what that offense looked like in Denver last season.
Yeah, right.
And how poor their play was despite the talent on that team.
Yeah, look, I mean, it would have been worse if they hired Clint Kubiak, who I don't think did a very good job at all when he was also basically co-offensive coordinator under Mike Zimmer for the Minnesota Vikings during that time period. So, plus, given the results on the field for the quarterback play, which as quarterback's coach, that's his responsibility for the Denver Broncos, Kubiak would have been a way worse hire. At least there are some bright spots on the resume of Nathaniel Hackett. However, it just feels like the Jets are in this really impatient space driven
100%.
by their fan base, and they're
just
not
feels very
thinking
reactive.
outside of the box at all.
It feels very reactive. It feels impatient because given that it's January 26th, the Super Bowl hasn't even happened. The offseason hasn't even really started in earnest. We don't know even what this team will fully look like yet going into the next season. Training camp won't start for another 5 or 6 months. I just think there certainly would be no reason to think that they couldn't have spent more time thinking about what they want that side of the ball to look like. And if the only reason for this is to think that this will be a bid to get Aaron Rodgers this offseason at age 40. If it happens, great, maybe, great question mark. But if it doesn't, this is the second time a team has tried to put the cart before the horse, to get the coordinator or the coach before the quarterback. There's no guarantee of this.
And also the second time that they've gotten an aging quarterback from Green Bay.
Right, and how did that pan out, guys?
I mean, given the already intense media firestorm around Aaron Rodgers, what's that going to be like with the New York Jets and the New York media, where the Jets have a way worse track record of keeping a lid on things than the Giants do, and understanding how to deal with the New York media,
and knowing Rodgers, notoriously cagey, private. I don't really like to say anything, even when I'm on my preferred media program of the Pat McAfee show. It also could be a disaster. Especially if, again, similar things like in Denver, and obviously with Russell Wilson, not Rodgers, if the media firestorm comes as a result of expectations not meeting reality.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So there's obviously
they're convinced that they're a quarterback away when they have a very talented roster, but a young and unproven roster.
Right.
And that assumption by the Jets is shocking to me. Not shocking.
Just from being 5-2 after 7 games, basically. That's what.
Who was the quarterback during that time?
Zach Wilson. Dennis the Menace. Dennis the Menace of his mom's friends.
Unbelievable.
So we'll see. We'll see. I would, as Wilson has telegraphed, I look forward to Wilson giving Aaron Rodgers a hell of a time in that QB in that QB contest and training camp.
Oh God.
But I agree with you though in the sense that it does seem a little reactive, a little impatient, and that this team is not really giving itself a whole lot of breathing room to like focus on what they're good at and work towards what they're struggling with without any sort of deliberation that I feel like they have given to every other aspect. Like, I feel like they have deliberately built on both sides of the ball
A good roster.
and built, with mid-tier free agent contracts through the draft, and they're just not doing it with their quarterback position.
Yeah.
It's the only thing where I feel like they're actively kind of sabotaging themselves.
All right. Well, with that said, shall we get into our locks?
Yes, let's do it.
ESVN.
Stone Cold Lock of the Century. All week.
Well, since we're doing 3 locks, it's spoiler alert. We have two that overlap.
Yeah, a little tough when there's
quick segment.
a little tough when there's only 2 games.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we should also say that last week Bradley and I both went 2-1, so not that interesting in terms of the changes in our records. Like, God, I can't believe we're near the Super Bowl. Wow. I'm 25-30-2. Bradley's 29-24-4. It's mathematically impossible at this point. Well, yeah.
Look at the.
Sorry. That's a screenshot
No, that's
of
cool.
the old one. I am 27-31-2. Bradley's 31-25-4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We both went 2-1. The Jaguars backdoor covered at +8.5 last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. For me, we both had the Bengals +5.5 and both thought the Bengals would win outright, and they did. That was a shocking line. And I lost San Francisco, Dallas over 46 by a lot. Bradley lost the over for Jacksonville, Kansas City.
Yeah.
I got kind of lucky with that because Mahomes, his injury, I think definitely contributed to that.
And the perfect cover. Right at the end, the field goal.
I
right
did,
at the end
right,
with the perfect
exactly.
cover.
Backdoor cover. Bengals +5.5. Bradley had as well, and then he also had the Niners covering at -3.5 against Dallas. Now, this is what we've got this week. Let's just tackle these first 2 together since we have identical reads on the Niners Eagles game. So we both have the Niners +2.5 against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think the Niners are going to win this game. Perhaps that's hopeful thinking in my estimation, but I just think the 49ers are more talented on every at nearly every position except quarterback.
That's really the only real
wide
distinction
receiver.
I see.
And wide receiver. I would still take AJ Brown and Devontae Smith over Debo and Ayuk.
I see where you're coming from there, but I guess I'm saying if I'm changing the category slightly from wide receiver just to skill position players,
Well then, right.
I'm still taking McCaffrey catching passes over someone like Miles Sanders or Boston Scott
So let's
or
just go
Kenneth
through it.
Gainwell, something like some people like that,
So offensive line, I still would take the Eagles.
That I think is the clear mismatch.
So they have quarterback, receiver, I still think, an offensive line. Running backs,
I would take
tight end, we take the 49ers.
for sure.
Defensive side of the ball, though,
It's pretty close.
I'm taking almost every position on the 49ers. I'm taking Nick Bosa over.
Well, Bosa for sure.
Yeah, I mean that three-headed monster of
The only people who I would maybe
Al-Shahir. Fred Warner is the best middle linebacker in football. It's not even close.
Linebackers and front 7 players. I mean linebackers and front 4 players.
Yeah.
Definitely 49ers. I think the biggest comp is the corners.
The corners, not. Yeah, you're right.
Like Slay and Bradbury versus
You're right.
Lenore,
Yeah.
but even Jimmy Ward is one of the best slot corners in the league. So I think where I see the reason why I even though obviously again like Niners are 2.5 point dogs. It's in Philadelphia. Like I know it will not be the most sparing environment for an away team, but I'm even just thinking like. The Eagles, to prove that they were back and prove that Hurts was healthy and prove that they were firing on all cylinders, they needed to kick the Giants' ass, and they did. But the Niners were playing a better team, in my opinion. Better personnel wise, better scheme wise. The best player on the Cowboys, in my opinion, either Dak or Micah Parsons, or was better than anybody on the Giants. I just think the competition level was higher for the Niners.
Yeah.
And that was an ugly game, and the Niners still won.
I think they tried to make it ugly. I think Dan Quinn threw the kitchen sink.
Right.
And I trust, I trust what Dan Quinn and his defensive and his defensive ability much more than I trust Gannon as a play caller.
And I'm curious, obviously, to see what the Eagles will try to do to stop those skill position players. And I think what that probably will look like is to just basically do what some teams have tried to do but have not been that successful at it, which is just making Purdy make quick decisions and make him get close enough to make mistakes to be capitalized upon.
The Eagles, the Cowboys did that with Purdy.
Right. And he still was able to basically remain upright and
Yes.
not throw interceptions or turn the ball over. And I think that's what they really need to make happen to be effective against the Niners offense.
And just to lean into our second pick, we're both doing under 46.5 points. Both of these defenses are phenomenal. I just think the 49ers are a more phenomenal defense. And I feel like I understand that the pass rush for the Eagles, they sacked the quarterbacks 70 times in the regular season. It's very good, but I don't necessarily think sacks are the ultimate indicator of defensive performance.
Yeah.
And overall, I think that DeMeco Ryans' defense is more sound and more talented across the board. And
I think dynamic too.
Dynamic, and that linebacking group, the Giants have maybe the worst linebacking group. That's one of the 3 or 4 or 5 worst in the NFL, and that's why they're able to gash them with the run.
The Eagles are not going to be able. Those yards will not come even remotely as easy.
Yes.
As they did against the Giants.
And then when you take them away,
Right.
it hurts as a passer, and he only threw for 154 yards against the Giants, 156. I'm not entirely convinced his shoulder's okay. And
we'll see if they're able to force him to pass the ball.
Yeah.
If those lanes are not clear over the middle, or for him to scramble.
Yeah.
And that he'll have to do that. And so I agree. I just think the Niners defense against the Eagles offense is going to be the real key, making sure that they can't score at will like they did against the Giants. And because of that, I just think this is going to be a bit of a slog. And not in a bad way. I think it's going to be great to see these two really good teams.
Classic football.
Really good defenses and smart, creative offenses game plan against one another. But I think because of that, it's going to be more of a chess match and less of a shootout.
Similar to the game last week where, the 49ers were like, you want to play defensively tough? We can do that.
Right.
We can go to your level. I don't need to make everything so flashy.
Right.
The one thing I'm worried about is that it seems like McCaffrey hasn't practiced and Deebo Samuel's a little banged up.
Even when he got that late in either the third or fourth quarter, that rushing touchdown right near the red zone, he was coming in and out, on and off the sideline. McCaffrey, he was not fully right. There was something, I can't remember if it was his ribs or something in his lower body, but he did not seem all the way healthy. So that's definitely will be a consideration. But at the same time, as I've been saying the last few weeks, if that means they have to give more touches to Eli Mitchell, that's not the worst thing in the world.
No,
he's a great running back. He's fully healthy again, and if anyone's going to scheme up creative ways to use the run, it's going to be Kyle Shanahan.
That's the thing. I take Shanahan over Sirianni. Sirianni's a good coach. Shanahan's a great coach. That's how I feel. Yeah,
and it's really just going to be game plan against game plan, counter versus counter, strategy versus strategy. It's going to be a fascinating game to watch.
Yeah. But
I just think until proven otherwise, until I see a real vulnerability, I still take the Niners here.
I'm taking the Niners 21-20. That's my score prediction.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say 2017 49ers.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. We got the right idea. Same idea.
Yeah.
Which means we'll probably both lose. Which means the Eagles will win. Yeah. But I just feel like the 49ers, they've got something going right here. They've got something going. So my final pick, since we're both doing Niners plus 2.5 and under 46.5. I'm going over for Kansas City and Cincinnati. I wanted to go with, honestly, my gut is telling me that the Chiefs are going to win this game. I don't know what that means. And you pick the Bengals plus 1. But
in Burrowhead?
It's just, you love that shit.
I love every year there's some sort of like, I love when people are like, oh yeah, that's bulletin board material for this team.
Right.
And I love that shit where a team kind of like does something kind of stupid. It's like, I'm motivated now.
Yeah. Well,
we weren't going to win this game until they started saying Burrowhead.
I mean, Eli Apple has given people bulletin board material for the rest of time.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, if
What
the
a
Chiefs,
clown.
if the Chiefs win this game, they could just literally just make a meal out of Eli Apple.
Just right, like post
before the Super Bowl.
some animated video on their official Twitter account of just pelting him with rotten
Yeah,
tomatoes.
right, exactly. Clown.
Yeah, but it's just I don't know who's going to win. That's the thing. I just did not feel confident enough to do what you did and go plus 1. I just think it is going to go over 48 points. Any Chiefs Bengals, that seems too low. And I know Mahomes has an ankle, but we just saw Chad Henne drove down the field 98 yards.
But we also saw, and I think what the biggest, I think my biggest indicator based on Mahomes' health is yes, Mahomes was able to still get some movement with Kelsey in the second half, despite his limited mobility and despite him not being 100% against the Jaguars. I just don't think that's going to be as easy with a Lou Anarumo defense, especially if I need to see what the counter Mahomes and Andy Reid and the Chiefs offense have for what I think is going to be Lou Anarumo doing a little bit of a variation on what he did last conference finals, where he's rushing 4, he's rushing 3 and dropping 8, or something like that, where safeties and secondary players and linebackers are blanketing the field, blanketing every if they double Kelsey. What is if there's a double on Kelsey, if they bracket Kelsey, what does Mahomes do if he can't scramble, or if he can't scramble 6 or 7 times, he can only scramble once or twice because of how he's feeling. I think if the Bengals can really take advantage of Mahomes' mobility struggles and stay in it offensively, I think they can win a close one.
Man, it's just it's tough here. I don't know how it's going to end up. I mean, I just feel like it's hard to say. Especially it makes sense that this is a pick'em of these two games. Although technically they're well, damn, what is that line? Because it keeps shifting here. Let me actually check.
Oh, did it shift again?
It's basically a pick'em. Yeah, the Bengals are 1 point underdogs, but I think the Chiefs at one point were 1 point underdogs, so it doesn't really matter. I saw Patrick Mahomes commenting on it, but regardless, your case is very compelling, and maybe this over is stupid. If I'm seeing Chiefs Bengals 48, anything under 50 seems too high or too low, I should say.
And also, if there's gonna be similar to the matchups from last week, like, you know, I wouldn't necessarily expect. Trevor Lawrence played valiantly, and the Jags played valiantly against the Chiefs defense, but I'm still thinking Joe Burrow will be able to take advantage of the Chiefs defense more than Trevor Lawrence could. And then the same thing on the other end of it, which is, you know. I think who did the Bengals play last week? I totally forgot.
the Bills.
Right. Like even as we were talking about Josh Allen and the limited explosiveness of that offense, I'm thinking Mahomes can even on one leg can take advantage of a good Bengals defense more than I think Josh Allen and his skill position players can.
Yeah.
So if there's going to be an over, it's because it's literally iron sharpening iron. It's great units playing each other.
And to buttress your point, it's so funny. You can remember a million names, but you can't remember who the Bengals played last week.
I was like, I don't even remember what the other playoff team was.
To bolster your case about the Bengals, it's Spags could get really blitz happy.
Oh yeah. And it's a matter of what
and then Burrow's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? How
Right.
many people are you gonna drop? Boom, right?
That's the thing is if that's the case, if they get free runners, if the Chiefs get free runners, if everyone is coming out, is everyone's trying to get home. If Burrow sees a positive matchup, if Burrow sees Jamar Chase 1-on-1 with somebody, T Higgins 1-on-1 with somebody, and kind of keeps those blitzes really honest, Spags is going to have to change the game plan.
Yeah.
Spags is not. I don't think he's necessarily going to be happy or comfortable with if he's having 7 guys blitz, and Jamar Chase is gashing.
If it's
Juan
one-on-one with
Thornhill or
Jamar Chase,
L'Jarius Sneed or somebody like that, they're gonna have to change their game plan.
If it's one of those guys, if he's 1-on-1, you can't leave him 1-on-1.
And it's
done. It's over. He will make the catch.
And it's you have to be really, really confident that those guys will get home on Burrow. And I understand to a degree because they are playing backup line. They will still be playing some backup linemen. Kappa, Lael Collins, and Jonah Williams, I think most likely are all not going to play.
Well, Lael Collins is out for
Lael Collins
year.
is full, right? He's fully out. So
he tore his ACL and MCL.
So he's definitely
hope
not
he's
playing.
okay,
No,
by the way.
truly. But he's definitely not playing. And if Cap and Williams are both not playing also, it still will be 3 backup linemen. But, I mean, Chris Jones is another story. Karlaftis is another story. But this backup line held up.
Yeah.
And so if they can again...
20 minutes ago, Pro Football Talk not ruled out Jonah Williams or Alex Kappa. So it's still up in the air.
It's up, but they could play.
Right, they could play.
If they're back, I mean, I think that makes it a little harder to think that just a torrent of blitzes is going to make Burrow uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see Burrow scramble. Because he can do it. We saw him outrun Gregory Rousseau, one of the most explosive athletes coming out of the draft last year or the year before.
No, Burrow's an underrated runner.
He's capable of doing it, and if he has to, I think he will. So I think this is a more interesting layered, offensive defensive matchup than basically just the line's not going to hold up or like.
God, this is the most exciting weekend. I'm so excited, especially because the Eagles and the 49ers are almost built similarly. They're both very deep, talented teams, not built around an elite top 5 quarterback.
Right.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And by a guy who took a massive leap.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, he's playing very well. That's I mean, in terms of if I'm him or Tua, I'm taking Jalen Hurts a million times over.
But even before last season, people were like, "What's the Eagles' future at quarterback?" And now that's we're not talking like that anymore.
Oh,
now
no.
Jalen Hurts is in the MVP conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why they got that pick from the Saints, because they were widely expected to trade up this year.
Exactly. And so and I totally agree. It's fascinating to see two teams where like the crux of their success is not quarterback down.
Yes.
It's kind of everything else complements where they are at quarterback very, very well.
But then
it's on
in the AFC
on the other end, it's two world beating
the two best quarterbacks playing right now. I mean, in the game.
Absolutely.
And Josh Allen just hasn't had that good of a season. You have to say that these two guys played the best this year.
And excluding the 5 difficult weeks the Bengals had in the beginning of the season, he's played nearly like perfect football.
Yeah.
He is maximizing every aspect of what makes a specific player like Burrow that type of quarterback. And what I mean by that is like he's incredibly cerebral. He's incredibly smart. He's incredibly quick. And combined with some pretty underrated, I'm not just saying this because he's a white guy, to be clear, underrated athleticism and
also underrated athletes on the defensive side, which I feel the same way about.
100%.
Like what's also cool about the Chiefs and Bengals is that when their offense can't carry them, you got Chris Jones will step up.
Right.
Sam Hubbard will step up for the Bengals. Like they
that's exactly what it
similarly, except right now the Bengals are a little
Trey
bit more
Hendrickson.
Chiefsy from a few years ago because they have a game breaker at wide receiver, which the Chiefs don't have right now. But they have Kelsey.
But that's what happened when you say Hubbard. Exactly, that's what happened with the Ravens game and with the fumble return. I mean, and that's what happened with the in the conference finals last year.
Yeah.
When Hubbard was in that spy position and Mahomes had nobody open and he ran down the field and he sacked him and that was the game.
Man.
So it'll be fascinating to see especially after all these matchups and all of that time since last year's conference finals, what'll be the same, what'll be different, and how these two quarterbacks will face what's in front of them.
I'm very excited.
It'll be awesome.
Incredibly excited. All right, guys. That's it. Those are our picks. Locks. Not so much locking, but locks-ish. And we will see you on Monday. Appreciate you all. Like the stream, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, do all that good stuff. Support the show if you can. Really appreciate you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.